to the most awesome presentation you will see all day. We have completed our cultural immersion project on the topic of linguistics. Let's meet the team. I'm a senior in agribusiness management and I was an outreach leader.
Hi, my name is Richard Chu. I'm a senior in ABE and I'm also an outreach leader.
Hello, my name is Meng Rama. I'm a senior in biochemistry and applied statistics, and I'm the subject matter researcher.
Hi, my name is Sharifa, and I'm senior in biological engineering, and I was a media professional.
Okay, so we started out by watching the movie Spanglish for our project, and it definitely opened our eyes to the challenges that people have with language barriers and how they are able to overcome them. The main character, Flora, and her daughter actually set to a new life in America and moved to Texas to find better job opportunities. Flora actually worked for a family who was all English speaking, and she was actually very frustrated from the beginning because she was not able to understand them and able to communicate and do what they were asking her to do. So by the end of the movie, she was actually able to overcome that barrier, and she was able to buy a package on the television that helped her learn English pretty fast. So that was her way of overcoming that barrier. So our question is, how are we able to help international students at Purdue able to help them overcome their language barrier problems? So as you can tell over here, we have the statistics of how Purdue is ranked nationally by being the third highest international student with enrollment. There's 21.9% of our undergrad students that are from international countries, so that makes it around 5,000 students. Many of those are from Asian countries, and a few of the countries that are highest ranked in the international students here in Purdue are China, India, Korea, and Taiwan. These are students who come from countries who do not have English as their first language. So what is the problem? So statistics do show that a lot of students that are from Asian countries such as China, with a large amount of international students coming from countries that English is not their language, are there really language barriers that cause these problems? We are actually going to be refuting this and talking about this in the rest of our slides.
So according to the previous slide, most international students at Purdue come from Asian countries where English is not the national language, which is like their first language. With realizing that language barriers exist here at Purdue, but is it truly a problem? Based on the fact and the problem that we realized, we make 3 assumptions for our CIP project. Firstly, international students have poor English speaking skills. Secondly, language barriers hinder interactions during group work. Thirdly, language barriers negatively impact academic success of international students. After making these assumptions, we need to find various tools and ways which we can use in order to investigate and test these assumptions. And the following are some methodologies we actually applied throughout this whole project. We will use the following steps to help us judge our CIP problem and those assumptions that we made. First of all, we create a survey which consists of several questions by using the Google Forms survey tool in order to better understand thoughts from students of various origins and backgrounds on campus. We surveyed those students from different years of schools and different countries, majors, academic standings, and different races about their own experience working with international students, and this better help us gain more knowledge on the facts in order to see whether our assumptions are correct or not. We surveyed a sample of 1,007 students and used their responses as statistical evidences to help us make conclusions for our assumptions. These statistics are non-biased and better support or represent the great population of students on campus how they think and judge. Secondly, we also performed several interviews with professionals who have great understandings of issues which related to international students here on campus. They definitely have better understandings of questions or concerns with international students and their language barrier issues. As we're interviewing with these professionals, we want to learn whether language barriers may exist here at Purdue, and is it truly a problem or not for international students.
So moving on, let's examine the assumptions we made earlier. The first assumption was international students have poor English skills. So from the survey that we did, we found that 57.9% of students agree that there are language barriers exist. But when asked, in your experience, do international students have poor English skills, 100% of our survey participants said no and did not think at all that international students have poor English skills. To further strengthen this finding, we interviewed Tianqing Lu, the president of Purdue University Chinese Student and Scholars Association, or PUCSA. Since more than 40% of international students at Purdue are from China, we thought that this interview would help us to better understand the issue on language barriers pertaining international students better. So one of the questions we asked was, have most of the members here in PUCSA, in your own perspective, have overcome any language barrier? And do you feel like having language barrier is still a problem here at PUCSA? As you can see, Tianqing thought that students who came here have to pass the TOEFL and IELTS requirements. This suggests that they have the high level of English proficiency. But the barrier might exist to the fact that international students feel uncomfortable talking to other students from different countries. So it is important to note that this issue is most relevant with freshmen, but not so much for sophomores, juniors, or seniors. In the end, we all agree that the assumption that all international students have poor English skills has to be refuted. Next, let's look at our second assumption. So does language barriers hinder interaction during group work? From our survey, 94.7% of students who have experience working with international students did not think that having international students actually slowed the progress of work or hinders interactions during group work. We also asked Tiger Chang, the president of Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers, SAIS at Purdue. SAIS is an organization with a large number of Asian students, both domestic and international. We asked Tiger for his experience, whether he has ever found it difficult to work with international students in groups due to language barriers while working within SAIS. With much confidence, Tiger refuted our assumption with his answer, such that language barriers, though very rarely existed, have in no way hindered SAIS' overall group work and cohesion. We thought that it is very interesting to know, since SAIS itself is a very well-known association on campus with diverse background of members who speak different languages. Yet, there are lack of language barriers issue and the members are all able to work together.
So now moving on to refuting assumption 3. Language barriers negatively impact academic success of international students. To gain the perspective of a reputable source, we reached out to the director of UR Global, a university residence initiative that provides first-year international students with the support and encouragement as they transition to life at Purdue. I had the terrific opportunity to interview the current director, Willie Cruz, and ask him a series of questions regarding the different international students that he has worked with through his program. The main question I asked him was whether or not he believed language barriers are a prevalent issue within the international students here at Purdue. His response was basically that not only does he believe that language barriers are not an issue, the international students in the program even had higher academic scores than average Purdue students. While this is just a single source, it has provided us with strong reason to refute our previous assumption. In all, from the 3 assumptions we listed, we found that in general, despite having the proficiency in English, international students are uncomfortable talking to students from other countries. This results in a lack of communication and barriers between international and domestic students. So, we decide that for our CIP project, we should focus on educating students and creating the opportunity and space to encourage more interactions between domestic and international students. At the same time, the CIP project also serves to educate the general masses about the misconceptions of language barriers. For our activity, we paired with the Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers to hold a Cultural Language Awareness Day. For this event, we set up a booth in MSWE from 12 to 3 on November 9th with SACE leaders. For the actual event, we created a trivia wheel along with different questions regarding demographics of international students here at Purdue, as well as simple true and false questions regarding misconceptions of language barriers. We set up this event in an open area so that we could create an open space for domestic and international students to interact and create opportunities that normally would be difficult to come by.
So while completing our cultural immersion project, we attended the Global Fest hosted by the International Center of West Lafayette and the City of West Lafayette. We watched performance by PUMSA for Malaysian Night. We participated in Indonesian Festival by Permias Purdue, and we also interacted with Japanese students during the Taste of Japan by JSA. So we've examined and refuted these three assumptions. First, international students have poor English speaking skills. Secondly, language barriers hinder international students during group work. And lastly, language barriers negatively impact academic success of international students. Through our group's analysis of these assumptions, we have determined that all these assumptions are false. And through our CIP project, we have learned that these international students have the capacity to overcome these language barriers, but they often find it difficult to become comfortable because there's a lack of interaction between both parties, that being the domestic students and the international students.
So now we're all going to mention what we learned during our CIP project. I learned that speaking English as a second language does not negatively impact a student's academics.
I learned that language barriers do exist, but the extent of which is not nearly to the magnitude we initially thought, and is actually not a major issue here at Purdue.
And I have learned that international students are very capable when working with domestic students.
Language barriers are more prevalent among underclassmen, but not so much for upperclassmen.
And I've learned that language is merely a vehicle to communication rather than a barrier that prevents people from developing relationships. Language barriers may have been an issue in the past, but today it no longer seems that way. So now we're going to talk about how we will apply what we've learned. I'm going to actively participate in learning new languages and help out others who want to learn my language.
I'm going to be able to communicate across language barriers better with international students.
I will bring back what I've learned back to international organizations I am part of and actively increase my engagement in these organizations.
I will be more welcoming and warm-hearted with those people who might have language barriers.
As an international student from China, I gained deep understandings with cultural immersion, and this better prepared me with communicating with domestic students and also students from various cultures, and in addition to overcoming language barriers in the future.